This is a story about what got me to start realizing that I needed to do some deep healing. And so I have to give you a little bit of a backstory. There's a particular moment over in a couple of years that started the journey downwards, the spiraling downwards into the deep kind of depression, grief, despair, and eventually an apathy that was very, very dark and bleak. Apathy as a space where you do not feel anything is actually very disturbing. When you realize that you're meant to feel things and care about things, I've now learned that that means that your spirit has entirely left you. Like there is nothing. You're just a vacant human body. You want to know, well, where am I now? I'm a permanent resident of the USA. I'm enjoying living my life with absolute freedom. I just turned 57. I love my life. I work remotely. I'm in a really blessed place. I travel the country, pet sitting, living where I want to follow the seasons because I don't like the cold weather. So I try to follow the sun. I travel internationally 2 or 3, sometimes 4 times a year. And so my life is pretty good. And I'm joyous, happy, in gratitude. Now, that doesn't mean that I don't have my moments or my days. I absolutely do. But I live my life with a certainty that comes from a knowing that everything that I've been through has made me a stronger person in the sense that I have faith in myself and my abilities and what I'm capable of. No saviors, no other things that that I need to put my belief system into. This is all me knowing what I'm capable of. There has been no quick fix. There has been no go and do this course and you'll be fine, or go and visit this guru and everything will be great, or go and do this ceremony and your life will be different. None of those. And don't get me wrong, I did fall for a few of those and expect everything to be a bed of roses afterwards. And I learnt always the hard way that that was not the case. Until I put in the work, until I unpack my shadow, until I face all the patterns and programming that I accepted and that I took on from ancestors, generations, parents, and society, until I faced all of those and got down to the core root of who I really am, nothing was going to change. Didn't matter how many books, workshops, ceremonies, it all came down to me and what my role and responsibility was. So I'm just putting that as the first and foremost thing here. I'm not trying to sell anything except the inspiration for you who's watching, who I want you to know what you are truly capable of. Because society, religion, stereotypes, systems, social media, marketing, all try and tell us that we're small and that we're better off counting on something else. That's just the beginning part of my spiel. And I guess the reason why I'm doing this, because I feel like everything that I've learned, I have to share this because there's too many people out there thinking that they're not capable when the power is truly within you. This is 2026. And about 12-ish years ago was the ending of my second marriage. Yes, I do have experience in the marriage divorce department. For me, we were best friends. We were a great couple, a great match. We found each other at the time when we both needed each other, and that was 10 years prior. We had been married for 10 years. And we got along as if we'd known each other for many lifetimes. There was an age difference. I was older than him. That didn't make a difference at the time. We owned a gym. It was a very small wellness studio. It was very boutique. And I loved it. It was my life. It was my passion. I just enjoyed the community that we had. And I know that he did as well, but he also had another career. Worked long, long hours, up very early in the morning, finish very, very late in the evening. And from the outside looking in, we were a very, very happy couple. We were fair, had that kind of look of life that everything was perfect. And we held up this idea that our relationship was the most perfect relationship. We had fun, we laughed together, and everything seemed great. However, it wasn't. And that came as a big shock to people when we got to the point of separation. And I'm not going into huge detail, but I need you to know, because this was the part of me that started to really just crumble. I believed he basically wasn't interested in me anymore. And my way of protecting myself, I had huge abandonment issues my entire life through my childhood and through previous relationships. I can see that now. I didn't see that then. And my way of responding to someone when it looks like they're about to push me away is to push them away first. That's my protective nature of myself, protecting my heart. And also because what I didn't know then was that I really just didn't know how to love myself at all. I'm speaking from hindsight because I've had this healing process of having to look at all of the ways that I responded to anything in my relationships and myself. And not just partnership relationships, but any relationship. I can now see what those patterns were. Back then, in that moment of time, in 2014, when I was losing my best friend and I was losing my entire life, because it was all revolved around us as a couple. The business was revolved around us as a couple. My community, my friends, they were all revolved around us as a couple. And yet I lost all of them. Now, he didn't. There was some weird thing about people assuming that I must have done something wrong. I was the headstrong one. I was the one that seemed to make all the choices, given that I was older and he was younger, and a very charming guy. And it was, I can see it myself, that it was a natural inclination. People will need to blame someone, right? That's what we do. We're not given a reason. And when we see something that looks perfect, that suddenly changes, we need a reason. We need to put it somewhere. We need to say, oh, something must have happened. They're just not telling us all of it. And I ended up being, I guess, the scapegoat. I ended up being the one who everyone pointed the finger at and said, something must have happened. There was no actual event of something that happened, but we had drifted apart. He had said he wanted to change his career and go off and do other things. And I knew I didn't want to be tied down with the business anymore and probably travel. At the time, none of those things happened the way we thought they would happen. And what's interesting is I was left absolutely shattered because it was very quick between our decision to separate that he went off and became very happy in a relationship, got married very quickly. He was quick to get divorced. Like, it was all this kind of very quick thing, even though separating and getting divorced was my idea. He was very quick to oblige and move on and become very happy. And for that, truly now I am absolutely so happy for. But what happened to me in that moment was the absolute shattering of my life. And I wasn't actually able to articulate that. Now, I want to make this a point because my personality at the time came off as a very strong-willed, capable, I can handle anything. And I was actually raised from that generation that didn't let you cry. And anyone as a Gen Xer will tell you, who was raised by parents that just made you get up and dust yourself off. And I would get in trouble when I was little if I cried, if a single tear rolled down my cheek. So for me, it had been impressed upon to not show emotion, to not let things get to you, not let other people see you not coping with things. I didn't realize how much that had stacked throughout my life, because by this stage I'm mid-40s, 45. already 45 years of a lot of traumatic events, which will probably come up in other versions and other episodes. I had already been traumatized in different ways. However, I never let them show. I never processed them. I never went to any kind of therapy of such, except for the ones that I had to. I will say that during my 30s, I went back to university and trained as a social worker, and ironically became a counselor, a life coach. I did all this I was so interested in figuring out what it was about our human psyche, psychology, behavioral science. I just loved it, but I never did it for myself. It was starting to be the crumble. Heart really couldn't take much more. And so my life really spiraled. To see him go on and have this wonderful life and take all our friends and take the community who completely turned on me and just kind of wanted nothing to do with me. And this was in the town that I was living in. So it was a real struggle for a little while. My unworthiness and my wanting to show that I'm the good guy, people pleasing, trying to be the nice person in every breakup. I took on all the debt. I'm really just showing everything here. And I want to do this because I think there's people out there that feel like the shame of debt, the shame of a broken heart, the shame of divorce, the shame of losing people who you thought were kind of friends, but it was obviously conditional. We had over the years with the gym and getting a mortgage because the world said you had to, we had all these debts that were terrible, terrible debts. Robbing Peter to pay Paul, all that kind of stuff, using credit cards to survive. Whilst the gym was a successful place, we already had so much debt that we could just never kind of chase it. We could never catch up, I should say. And that all of that financial struggle was on my shoulders. He refused to help me with any of that kind of financial support or understanding how can we get ourselves out of this. He never wanted to know anything about it. That was really hard for me because I took on all that responsibility and I always wanted to look like we were okay. I just never wanted the world to know that we were struggling. So always putting on the brave face, money's fine, even though it wasn't. Sometimes I would sit in my office at the studio and just bawl my eyes out and hope that no one would see me. Sometimes it was in between clients because the pressure of always making ends meet with a smile was just unbelievable. So from the divorce, I was left with what was then an $80,000 debt, which I clearly had no idea how I was going to pay that back because now without the gym, I had nothing. And I had been doing that for 5 years. So it was back to work for me. And it wasn't that I wasn't qualified. I was quite qualified. I'm one of those people that could jump into pretty much any role and make it work. The idea of after having your own business, being self-employed, then losing everything, including more of your self-worth, and having an $80,000 debt to start with was really hard to motivate myself to go and find a job. As you can imagine, there are that financial downfall was one of the biggest challenges in itself of my own shame and guilt that I had gotten us there. Even though that's not the real and entire story, I took on all the blame. I took on all the responsibility for my spending habits and why I said yes to things and why I tried to hide it and all of those things. I took on all of that. And then what I did to kind of build that back. And so that's probably a whole other story that I think one day I will get there because I think that might be helpful for some people out there really struggling with either obscene amounts of debt or also this relationship we have with money. Because when I unpacked that later on, I realized where that came from my parts of my childhood, of course. Doesn't everything come from that? but also what I felt about myself with money and my value and being able to ask for money and what my worth was, all that kind of stuff. And a quick point on that, I was able to negotiate. So I was toying up whether to go bankrupt, and I was able to negotiate a plan. It was a 7-year plan to pay it off, and that was amazing. It was very challenging. I was trying to kind of get back into what I knew, which was helping other people, continue my own business, but I had nothing to give. And I knew that I would need to take myself out of that. There's kind of a whole year or so, year to 2 years of me just trying to manage what I had left. I was still trying to rent a place. I had my daughter. She was kind of with me at the time, but that was also at the age where she could go and live on her own. I lived with friends. Being around me was a bit of a not fun. Very capable and grown up. So at that age, and went to live with her friends. So I've gone from this kind of great partnership, having my daughter with me, this amazing community that I'd wake up to every day and work amongst my community. We had great friends. We had an amazing social life. Probably not healthy, not healthy. I was a drinker and we partied a lot of times. So I'm not suggesting that any of that was healthy, but what I mean was that that lifestyle that I had was very different to now being immediately on my own and everyone being out away from my inner circle, judging me, also assuming that I'm the bad person. So of course I agreed I must be the bad person, right? I mean, everyone can't be wrong. So here I am, the bad person, drinking most days. Oh, well, it would definitely be every day because there wasn't a day that I didn't drink because by then I had no reason not to drink. That would be the only thing that would help me numb what was already numb and pass out and fall asleep. Now, the other layer to this is that I'm also going into perimenopause. I probably couldn't really see it because all my hormones were all mashed from the bad eating, the bad drinking, the stress, the depression, the self-hatred, and the suddenly from going to being a personal trainer to not taking care of myself at all. Like literally just stopped everything. That was the beginning of the bottomed out pit. I hadn't reached it yet. So I'm living with my mum, not in an ideal place. It's a very tiny home. My stepfather is, well, both my mother and my stepfather are contributors to basically most of my childhood trauma, and my dad. He's already passed. My stepfather has since passed, but at the time he was basically disabled and mum was taking care of him. It was awful. I respect the fact that mum was doing her best and that they opened their house to me. I'm not complaining about that. But I was literally sleeping in a double bed bunk with my mum on the bottom and I was on the top bunk because the house is so small I didn't even have my own room. I'm not making this up. So I just laugh about it now. I get a helpline from a very dear friend. They offered me a place in their house. They had two gorgeous, beautiful young girls. They're all grown up now. And offered me that if I cooked meals for their family, that I wouldn't have to pay rent. And I didn't have to think. I'm not much of a cook, by the way, but I can whack things together. And I thought, I really need to get out of here because it was like in a completely other state of Australia. It was in Queensland and I was in New South Wales at the time. I just went, yes. And so off I went, packed up everything. I didn't have very much left by this stage. My minimalistic lifestyle had kicked in and I had started to cull lots and lots of things. And it was amazing. They had a beautiful home, beautiful family, and I did my best to stay out of the way, but do my role and try and survive with no actual cash. This is where the unemployment benefit came in. So I was on unemployment benefit. I thought, oh my gosh, here I am, a full qualified career woman who's owned 3 previous businesses in her lifetime, and I had this whole full kind of resume of all the amazing things I'd done. And here I was applying for unemployment benefits at the time and cooking for a family to supplement board. There's absolutely nothing wrong with that. Sometimes you have to put your pride aside and do whatever it takes to open yourself up to be helped. And this was the lesson that I got from all that, because I wasn't the type of person that ever asked for help, which is what got me into the pickle in the first place. I always had to do everything by myself, huge control freak, huge kind of I'll do it my way of all of these events that came up that just kind of chopped my ego at the ankles, at the knees, at the hips, and made me get kind of what felt like lower and lower and lower, were all ways of letting me see being helped isn't the worst thing in the world. It was a beautiful, loving family, which was an honor to be a part of. Girls were just adorable. We would have some great times. I was still very unhealthy and unwell. I was still drinking a lot, still eating unhealthy, not taking care of myself. None of that had changed. I was masking it. It helped me to get through each day by being with this family and feeling like I was contributing to them as well. Like I said, I was on unemployment, which is not very much, and still paying off my debt, just going straight to trying to pay off my debt. 20 odd years of hospitality background behind me. I should just get a couple of shifts in a cafe and try and get some cash for myself. I needed to work. I was a workaholic my entire life. So not working was driving me crazy. Here I am working in a cafe 5, 6 hours, a couple of days a week for some supplemental income, unemployment benefits. I'm getting coupons for my work shoes, working for a family, cooking them meals to pay for my board, drinking every day, stacking on the weight, going through perimenopause. And it was just Groundhog Day, Groundhog Day, Groundhog Day. I didn't want to wake up and do the same thing again. And yet I did. I couldn't stop. It was just, that's how it would be. I still hadn't hit rock bottom yet. Nope. Still had not hit rock bottom.